The sun is up, the day is wide open, and life still has so much to give. Every laugh, every step, every shared moment says the story is still unfolding beautifully. You are not finished yet. Your story continues.
Still ahead. Each episode shares real stories of reinvention, the risks, the decisions, and what it actually takes to build something new later in life. Because the truth is, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Can I just add that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of any organisations, employers, or partners connected to them. Before we start, a quick note. A large number of people who listen to the podcast haven't yet subscribed. If you find these conversations valuable, hit subscribe or follow on your platform. It makes a huge difference and helps us keep sharing these stories. Now, let's get into this week's story.
Excellent. So here we are, thanks for coming on. Can I just, before we do get down to anything, Russell, is it Van Brocklen?
Yes. You're one of the few people that got that right.
Yeah, I was looking at it thinking, oh, wow, I could really mess this up. But anyway, let's get into. So today, guys, thanks for tuning in. Today we've got a bit of a theme here, slightly different theme. We're going to be talking about helping parents, teachers, and adults understand dyslexia differently, moving away from shame, frustration, wait and see approaches toward confidence, strengths, practical support that actually works. All I can say is a dyslexic child isn't broken. They're often being taught in the way their brain was never designed to learn. That's what I was told when I was at school by a very clever guy that worked out what I had. So welcome back to Not Finished Yet, the podcast sharing stories, insights and tools around reinvention, growth and finding new direction in life and work. Today's guest is Russell Van Brocklen, known as the Dyslexia Professor. Russell helps students and families move from daily frustration and emotional exhaustion towards academic confidence and lasting self-belief. Dyslexia affects millions of learners worldwide, yet many children still grow up believing they're lazy, behind, or simply not smart enough. Russell is on a mission to change that story through structured literacy and practical strategies parents can start using immediately. More importantly, he believes dyslexia learners are often specialists rather than generalists, children with deep passions, creativity, and strengths that traditional systems frequently overlook. Russell, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to get straight into it, Russell. First of all, tell me, what is dyslexia, and more importantly, what isn't it?
Okay. Do you think you may be dyslexic?
I was told I was years ago, yeah, when I was at school.
Okay.
And I think I've got some of that, but I don't think I'm severely dyslexic from people that I know.
Would you like to find out by answering two questions?
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. The first one has a few parts. First of all, I need to know what your speciality is. What's your area of extreme interest and ability?
Creating new things. That's what I've got.
When you're thinking about creating new things, do you have ideas now or any time in the past flying around your head at light speed but with little to no organization?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So that tells me you're ADD, ADHD, or mildly dyslexic to start off with. Now, here's the second question. When you're thinking about writing about your speciality, about creating things, fingers, keyboard, fingers, keyboard. The ideas in your head, you take your fingers and put them on the keyboard. Does the idea ever fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain?
Yeah, well, I have to get things out of my head by writing them down and typing them down. And I often write exactly how I talk, which is very grammatically poor, but I do, and I'm very quick to get it out, and then I'll relax, and then I might go back at that. But I'll write the initial bit down, and then I'll go back to it with time to try and clean it up.
Okay, so the second question is no, right? The idea you don't put your fingers on the keyboard and then you have an empty head. That's not you?
No.
Okay, so that tells me it's one of three things: ADD, ADHD, or mildly dyslexic. That is not scientific. It's just a pattern that I found that when people are actually tested and they come back, it's right over 90% of the time. So probably one of those three things. So what is dyslexia? Well, why don't we go to the science? This is the science. This is dyslexia. This is the top book on it. It's called Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Shelley Shaywitz from Yale. That's dyslexia. See how the back part of the typical brain has this massive neuroactivity and the back part of the dyslexic brain has next to nothing? See how the front part of the dyslexic brain has about 2.5 times the neuroactivity? So what we have to do, stop using the back part of the brain and start using the front part. So what I'd like to do is to actually show you in about 10 minutes how to fix the biggest problem parents come to me with. It's an elementary to middle school age dyslexic child who's writing what appears to be randomly placed misspelled words, and nobody has a clue how to fix it. I'd like to show your audience how to do that in about 10 minutes. And then at the end, you're going to know exactly what dyslexia is. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah. Lovely.
All right, I'm just going to let you know, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. They are not trick questions. This is what I ask 7-year-olds. If you answer them exactly, this will work. If not, you're going to get incredibly confused. Then you're going to have an epiphany in what dyslexia really is. All right. So I want you to know, have you ever noticed let's take you for instance, when you were in elementary school, were you ever writing randomly placed misspelled words?
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to remember yourself, Mark, at, let's say, 10. What was your speciality? What was your area of extreme interest and ability back then?
I was a busy person. I just wanted to do whatever I could do. Very sporty. So I was always wanting to. I didn't want to sit still. So can't really remember if I had a speciality.
What did you really like a sport back when you were 10?
Yeah, sport.
What sport?
Football or soccer, as you call it.
Yeah, let's call it by its proper name, football. All right. So here's what we do. I'm going to go back in time and we're going to bring up 10-year-old Mark and I'm going to show you how to teach him. First thing you're going to do is you're going to pull out a real laptop computer with a real keyboard. Not an iPad, not an iPhone, and certainly not handwriting. And you're going to type out hero, +sign, what are we talking about? And then you're going to have 10-year-old Mark copy that until it's correct. Then we're going to swap out hero for Mark. So now we got Mark, +sign, what are we talking about? Then we're going to go to a list of 10 things that Mark really, really likes and 10 things that Mark's really, really dislikes. And the first thing that he really, really likes is football. So we got Mark, +sign, what are we talking about? We're going to swap out what are we talking about for football. We got Mark, +sign, football. See how we got there? Now, I'm going to ask you those 2 questions. If you answer them exactly, this will work. If not, you're going to get incredibly confused and then have an epiphany in what dyslexia really is. Do you think I can fool you with 2 of the simplest questions ever?
Probably, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's see what we got. Mark, +sign, football. We need to swap out the +sign for a word. Here's my question. Does Mark like or dislike football? Exactly. You're one of the few people that got that correct. Now I'm going to give you the really hard part. I need you to put that word into the sentence and give me the 3-word sentence.
Mark likes football.
But that's not what I asked. Let's try it again. We got Mark, +sign, football. We're going to swap out the +sign for like or dislike. And you got it correct the first time, which was like. All right. Now go ahead and replace that and give me the 3-word sentence.
So, I'm going to say Mark likes football.
But that's not what I asked. Do I have you nice and confused right now?
You do, I'm afraid, yeah.
Okay. Are you ready to have your epiphany in what dyslexia really is?
Yes, please.
Okay. So here's what's going on. This is generally processed in this part of the brain. If you weren't dyslexic, this is where this would have been processed. But what happened is you were actually taught properly So we move things up here, but generally this is where it's processed. 10-year-old Mark has nothing going on back here. So when I asked, does Mark like or dislike football? Mark's dyslexic. He doesn't know how to add the S. You did is what every educated person tends to do. You added the S automatically to make it a proper sentence. Mark can't add the S at 10. You learned how to do that subsequently to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So then we have to have a question. How did you learn to eventually write with proper grammar? What happened?
Yeah, just I suppose I don't think I ever learned how to write properly until I did it on my own back. Do you understand what I mean? I did
Yeah,
it like
you eventually just tried a lot of different things, and over the years, you
yeah,
eventually figured it out.
absolutely.
Okay, so
I still get a
when we're
blockage on things like silly little words, and I don't know if that's got anything to do with dyslexia, but for example, if I'm going to spell who, rather than go straight to the WHO, sometimes I have to think how I'm going to spell that small word. And what's really strange is I can possibly spell the long word a lot easier than I can spell the smaller ones.
yeah, and then what you did is over years, probably well into adulthood, you just started figuring out different things. Then eventually, you figured out how to do this. Okay, so if you're looking for how the rich do it, like the investment bankers down in London who make after tax £1 million+ a year, they would send their child to a school like the Windward Academy, the Windward School in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. They have a documented 98% success rate. And what they would do is they would literally take a student in and then work with them for 4 to 5 years, then send them back to where they came from, as educated as the finest private schools anywhere in the world, for 75,000 a year for 4 to 5 years in tuition only. So I want you to think about that for a second. Most of us don't have those financial resources. So then how can parents do this at home? Well, what do you say we follow the science? Yale told us it's right here. The front part of the brain is 2.5 times overactive. They even told us it's word analysis followed by articulation. So how do we apply word analysis followed by articulation to solve this? It's easy. I would ask 10-year-old Mark to read what he wrote out loud. Mark, like football. I say, okay, Mark, read it again and answer this question. Does that sound generally correct? Mark, like football? No, it doesn't. And then 10-year-old Mark I would have told him, fix it. Mark likes football. Then we'd try that for the other 9 likes and 10 dislikes. Do you see how that's a simple form of word analysis?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we go because reason 1. Give me a simple reason why 10-year-old Mark liked football.
Because of the excitement of watching it, really. Watching it on
Mark?
TV, watching
Yeah.
it live, watching it. The
Mark,
excitement.
okay.
Yeah.
Mark liked football because of the excitement of watching it. Now, do you see how we would have a lot of grammatical issues? So what we would do is I would tell Mark, read what you wrote out loud. Does it sound generally correct? Fix it. And you would probably need to do that about 4 to 7 times when you were 10. And eventually you get it so it does sound correct. That takes care of the horrendous grammar mistakes. You're now left with some little grammar, some minor ones, maybe some medium ones. Teachers are prepared to deal with that, but the horrendous stuff, that's been fixed. But then we still remember all those spelling problems you had? Well, here's how we fixed that. We would have said, read the entire thing out loud. I'm sorry, we were told to drop a period, and then every time you had to retype it. Every time you misspelled any word, you had to retype the entire sentence, which would do about 3 to 7 times. Okay, does that make sense? So you would redo that again, and each time you're going to say, "I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm not going to make that mistake." And what that would do is that would really force you to think very hard up here, And eventually that would get your brain to organize a lot more and you'd get it correct. All right. So that's how we would deal with the spelling. But just to go back, can you see how the reason is a simple form of articulation? Okay. So because of that, word analysis and articulation, we go from the back part of the brain to the front part. Now, what we would do is we would do that for reason one for the total 10 likes and 10 dislikes. And then we would keep exactly that same thing for reason, and then we'd add a second reason. I connect it with the glue word and. And then we would do that for the 10 likes and 10 dislikes. And then we would add a third reason. Keep the first two reasons the same thing for the 10 likes and 10 dislikes. What would happen is after you're done with that, you can write a proper 3-reason sentence with decent grammar and correct spelling. For a 9-year-old, that could take about 5 months with parents doing it, because parents do 10 to 15 minute sessions 2 to 4 times a week. Some weeks they do none, sometimes they do more. For a 13-year-old, you're probably going to get through that in a matter of a few weeks. For an 18-year-old, you're probably going to get through that within a week. Okay,
Do you
so
think
the
that's
older
why
you are,
traditional schools fail then? Do you think that's because they is at the time? Because you mentioned, you know, you know, rich people. They're, you know, what's the difference? Why are they failing in traditional schools and not private? It can't just be down to resources, is it? Or is it?
oh, well, because, okay, again, so I'm going to compare Windward. Some people think this is a little off, but I think it's about right. I'm going to compare Windward to like Eton College. Okay, that's the level they're playing at. So what they do is they have just dyslexic and similar neurodiverse students. That's all they do. The reason they're 75,000 a year, and by the way, the teachers are horrifically poorly compensated compared to public school teachers, is because the student to teacher ratio is 4-to-1 to 5-to-1. And to become certified in the Orton approach, which is what the rich have been using for literally, the Gowell School is celebrating its 100th anniversary in just south of Buffalo, New York, because we've known about this for a century. Literally, what they're doing is they're using a approach that was perfected from the 20s through the 50s, hasn't changed a heck of a lot since, and they are literally teaching dyslexics how to work in a way that research has shown the brain works differently. And it is so intensive. It literally takes to become certified in that approach. It's 2 years after a bachelor's degree, and it costs about $11,000 for a not-for-profit. It is so massively resource intensive that it cannot be duplicated without an immense cost. Is there a way of fixing it earlier? Absolutely. All you would have to do is contact Yale. Just Google Yale dyslexia, and you can ask them, how do we test for dyslexia in kindergarten? And they will tell you it costs about $40 or $50 a kid. The teacher can do it. Now, once you find out that they're dyslexic, you then go back to Yale. How do we fix this? Well, in the United States, we have something called the National Institute of Health and the U.S. Education Department that hands out $30+ billion a year in research grants. Over the decades, they have accumulated courses that are proven successful to teach dyslexics to read kindergarten through 3rd grade. And Yale has access to them all. They will show you what they are, how to get trained in them, all that. It's all there. It's a non-for-profit. Okay. Then you just follow that, because in the United States, K through 3, think 5 through 8, you learn to read. 9th and above, you read to learn. If you pass the 3rd grade reading test, you're going to be okay statistically. If you fail, you're in a 911 emergency. Then we literally have the kids' parents sue the school districts to send them to those private schools in federal court. So it's a mess. But because the schools won't do it in kindergarten, then the kids left with it, and we're spending literally almost double the cost of educating these kids throughout the rest of their school year. And we're wasting billions upon billions of dollars for really subpar results.
So like, you know, I found out my child is dyslexic. I believe they are. You know, a lot of people have said, that there's some learning that can be done through movement, sound, visuals, interaction. What small, I don't know how you feel about it. Maybe you tell me that, but what small changes?
What I can tell you is, first of all, how old is your kid?
No, my children are grown now, but I'm just saying. Suppose people listening, we found
Okay.
out. We found out. Let me ask it another way. We just found out your child's dyslexic. What small changes can parents make then immediately, without listening to all the noise around what's right and what's
Well,
wrong?
I don't do tips. I do solutions. So why don't I tell you what the next step, general step is? So I just showed you how to do the basic sentences. Now, we have classes where we on a learning platform called School SKOOL.com. Just type in dyslexia classes, and you'll find us. I just showed you how to do the basic sentences. Now, for the basic body paragraphs, we have a course on there that deals with that, but I'm going to now show you the advanced version. All right. So this is mostly what we would do for an advanced body paragraph for middle, high school, and college students. We just want to know, how far did you go in your education?
Me, I was only to college. I was only college. No
Okay,
university.
so you went to university.
I didn't go to university. No.
Okay,
No.
you didn't go to yours. Okay. You're a writer. I'm going to show you how to improve your writing with using this. This is how advanced this is. It's from a book called The Craft of Research, which is designed to teach doctoral students how to do their PhD dissertations. We're going to start off with a universal theme, and it's going to appear like every other dyslexic solution, like it's out from the middle of nowhere. We're going to start off with a movie review. It's going to make sense very quickly. I need you to tell me a name of a movie that you think is one of the best of all time, that you know intimately, that everybody has seen. What's the name of that movie?
It's got to be Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. Okay. So now I'm going to ask you a very difficult question. I need you to reduce Goodfellas to a one-word universal thing that best represents the movie in your view.
Oh, yeah. That's a good question. Camaraderie, really. It's all about camaraderie and getting, people that have had nothing trying to make something of themselves.
Okay. Camaraderie.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to ask that to a person with a master's degree in filming, how long a gen ed person, how long do you think it would have taken them typically?
Probably a better explanation, perhaps, than me. I don't know.
No,
Probably, yeah.
would have taken longer, a considerably amount longer. So let me just show you what's going on. We're in this part of the brain now. You have 2.5 times their neural activity. They're now playing in our sandbox, and we're so much better at it. Typically, it would take them probably about 4 or 5 times longer to come up with something similar. How do I know? We met on Podmatch, and this is my 270 some odd podcast I've been on. All right. I ask this a lot. So what we would do with this to write a proper movie review, we would ask, how do the main actors do with camaraderie, universal camaraderie? How did the director do? How did the screenwriter do? You'd write up the movie review. Then the people would decide, do I want to see this or do I not want to see this? If I want to see this, what is the you've enhanced their experience, because they now know what to look for and from whom. But you haven't ruined it by saying this happened, this happened, and this happened. Problem is, it's such a broad universal theme. It's a broad brush. So back in the 90s, this would have worked. We could have done a marketing campaign around camaraderie, because we had a few TV networks, a few main papers, and you just blasted to everyone. But in the 2020s, we need to get much more specific. So now I'm going to kind of traumatize your audience for a moment, because we're going to go back to high school English Shakespeare just for a moment. All right. I want you to think back to anything any Shakespeare play you ever read. You had a hero. The hero wanted to do something based on one or more universal themes. Then you have an ultimate villain that would be based on a character, some concepts, and some universal themes that try to prevent the hero from accomplishing their goal. They would have a conflict in Act 1, escalate like crazy in Act 2, resolve in Act 3. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
We're going to simplify that a little bit. I'm using Shakespeare because he's considered the top person in written communication in English language history by a lot of experts. So let's say we are going to use the script of good. So the movie you mentioned name was what again?
Goodfellas.
Good. Yep, we're going to use the script of Goodfellas, and kids could use this for middle school, high school, or college writing. So what we would do is then find a hero, and then I'd tell the kids write out. And remember, assuming they already can do basic body paragraphs from a previous course we taught. They then type out as many body paragraphs they can on what the hero wants to do. Then for each of the, would have them look through each of the sentences and pull out the most important word in each sentence, and then type it out and make a list of them. Now we're going to address the issue of how we teach reading to dyslexic students, but also we're going to have to focus on how to actually get them to do this. Most of these kids, if we're doing something they care about, they will do the work, but some won't. So I came up with something that they tell me is the most evil creation I ever came up with. When we do the dislikes, I'll have the parents tell me what the kid's chore is that they hate the most. So when you were 10, what was the chore that you just hated?
Yeah, to get my pocket money, I had to do some hoovering, and I didn't like doing the hoovering.
Is that the worst thing chore you could have
it was
done?
just something I wanted to be out, and I had to be in. That was the reason, not the actual task. The fact that I was restricted to do like hoovering and cleaning.
Yeah, but
But
what was the worst one? What was the worst chore? You just despised it.
I despised it. I think despised it the most was when I was asked to do the dusting, because I had to pick up every bit of ornament and dust it underneath. I didn't have a bad life, don't get me wrong, it was a really good life. So what people are listening to now are probably thinking, really? But yeah, I did. I wasn't. I lived with my mum only, and I didn't do much.
Okay. Well, imagine if she said you're going to have to not only dust this, but dust the neighbors, do all that sort of stuff until you eventually do what I'm about to ask.
Yeah.
All right. Do you see how that gives a kid motivation? Okay. So here's why, because now we actually have to teach you to read as well. So each one of those most important words, I'm going to have the kid type that out. Then we're going to go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary or Oxford English online dictionary. And the kid's going to literally pick their definition. Then they're going to type out their word and their definition. The parents, whoever's doing this, no trust. You are looking over the kid because they're going to try to copy and paste, which will ruin it. They got to type out the word, type out the definition for each one. Then then they're going to pick out the best, most important word. And then we have the same problem we did when in your movie review, Universal Fame. It's a broad brush. So we have to get something much more specific. So what we would do is then we would go to thesaurus and you would type the word in and we'd get the synonyms. You can do 5, 10, the entire level, multiple levels. For each one, you're going to type out the word and then go and find the definition and type that out. Because over time, it takes about 6 to 12 months. What's going to happen is you're going to develop a vocabulary of hundreds of evolved words. I don't know if you have to type out the word and the definition so many times, or 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is. Then the kid learns it, masters it. They do that at 10 and 11 when they're doing their SATs at like 16 or 17. They remember like 70, 80% of the definitions. They don't have to go through all these word lists. They already know them. So we do that over the course of 6 to 12 months. They have a vocabulary of hundreds of involved words, and that's how we get them to jump the reading level. So once we do that and we find the one that best represents what's in their head, it's much more focused. We can then use that as a lens to laser focus and find the ultimate villain. I start off with a person, a character, and then eventually I move on to concepts. So now we got the hero, the universal theme, and the ultimate villain. We make that a simple sentence. Do you see how that's an advanced form of articulation?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to just do a simple version of word analysis. You're going to tell me 3 good reasons. Each reason we're going to simplify to a one-word universal theme. Then we're going to go to the script of Goodfellows, and I'm going to want a sentence that deals exactly with that universal theme at the beginning of the script and one near the end. We're going to take those two quotes and put them together, and that's going to be our data. Then from those two quotes, we're going to come up with our topic sentence. Now, the problem, do you remember back in school when you had your topic sentence and your data, it didn't flow very well?
Yeah, probably a different education than you guys. I don't know what your curriculum was, but yeah, I get what you're trying to say.
This is only for typically really advanced students. We have an AP English all the way through doctoral stuff. But the issue is generally your topic sentence, your data doesn't flow. So from the craft of research, I use something called a warrant. It connects and almost nobody with a master's degree has any idea what this is. You connect your topic sentence with your data by answering a how and why question. And then that makes the flow much better. So if you start applying that to your dyslexic kids, start applying that, and a university professor sees it, they become immediately impressed because, hey, you got some middle or high school kid using warrants, which they're very familiar with, which very few of your English teachers know.
Yeah.
But that's just a more advanced version. But to generally understand the model, the first thing that you need to understand about dyslexics is you need an intervention period. Okay. So by that, I mean, and the first rule is of the 3-step model, I gave you the third step, is we have to focus on the kid's speciality during that intervention period.
Yeah, so I want to hit that on that because you've often said that dyslexic learners are specialists, not generalists. So what do you actually mean by that?
So in other words, I'll give you an example of like much more or so. And the kid with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they only care about their special areas. They only care about their really small area that they're really interested in. You step outside of that, you can't get them to do anything. Okay, so let me give you an example. During the intervention period, you have to focus on the kid's speciality, their extreme interest and ability. The student I'm about to tell you about, Casey, I never saw anybody like Casey before. I will never see this again. The hundreds of teachers I taught will never see this. This was a one-off edge case. Casey was 10 years old, finishing up 5th grade. She turned 11 over the summertime. She was reading at the 2nd grade level. And she came from a lower middle class family in the Midwest. She was interested in President Theodore Roosevelt, so I assigned her this little book. Remember, she's reading at the 2nd grade level, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, all 900 pages of it. This book is at the 10th grade to first year college level, think 15 to 18 years old. Nobody hinted this, nobody even thought of this. She took that concept I showed you about how to do a similar version of that, how I showed you how to do the advanced word analysis. She went up to her room, shut her door for 3 hours a night for 6 months, most of the days during the summertime. At the end of that, you could flip to this random page, point to that random word, and she would tell you literally what the dictionary definition is. She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months, and I worked with her for 15 minutes a week. Well, that's not the point. The point was Casey's mom wanted to know what would happen if we went from a book she loved to one that she didn't like. So she took about 3 months, and here's the point. I said, what happened when we went to something you loved to something you hated? She said it dropped about 15. Her motivation dropped about 50%. Most kids would drop 75 to 90%. So during the intervention period, you have to be on the kids. You have to focus on the kids' speciality. The next thing is, do you remember when I asked you, in your speciality, did you have ideas flying around your head at light speed, but with little to no organization? Okay. So what we have to do is then force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Let me explain that. Put in English. If I were to ask you, what effect did Martin Luther King's famous "I Have a Dream" speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s? Do you see how those instructions are kind of hard for you to follow? It's big picture, eventually going to the details. That's how the gen ed brain works. But we need to flip that. We need to ask something very specific and then slowly go out. We would ask what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech. Once we do that, we can go to the book, find the answer. That answer will give us a question, which will give us the answer, which will give us a question, which will give us an answer. That forces the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. And then we do word analysis followed by articulation, and then things accelerate very quickly.
Yep.
A lot of times people ask, well, what's an example of that? In the book, it's going to be coming out in the next few months, which I'm writing, which will be, if you can write, you can read. My part is about Kimberly. I met her in December 27th of 2024. Kimberly is a homeschooling mom who's very religious, has 5 kids, has some college. A few weeks before this, she spent $700 to have the state of Ohio test her kids. Her 4 gen ed kids, she taught brilliantly to read, but her dyslexic son, Reed, was having a really hard time. He was reading at the 11th percentile, writing at the 4th. She worked with him for half an hour a week for the rest of the school year. I worked with her for half an hour a week for the next 8 months. She worked with him for an hour and a half a week for the next 8 months. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions. At the end of that, during the summer of 2025, Reed's friends came to him and said, we want you with us in public school for social reasons. So he decided to enroll in public school. It was in August of 2025, call it 8.5 months later. So he was retested. If Kimberly doubled what he did, he would still have been special ed. Didn't happen. He increased from the 11th percentile in reading to the 64th. His writing went from the 4th to the 65th. His grammar went to the 97th percentile. As of April of 2026, he's in mainstream classes, getting mainly A's and B's. Kimberly solved in less than 9 months what every parent dreams of, and she did it in an hour and a half a week, compared to full-time at a private school, which would take years. That's are this is.
So, let's say we understand, like those who don't, are trying to keep up. Are dyslexic learners often more creative thinkers then, or are they more?
Yeah, we don't show our potential until grad school. Okay, let me give you two examples from me. When I didn't learn, I was reading and writing at the first grade level when I went to audit law school classes. Second day of class, I was called on by the professor. What they do in American law schools, they use the Socratic method. If you don't know the answer, they will ask you questions that you can't answer to embarrass you until you eventually can. It didn't happen to me. I argued back with him, and then I went on the attack after him. And he couldn't believe it, so he's going after me. I'm going after him. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He couldn't beat me. I couldn't beat him. He threw up his arms, said, you couldn't be any more correct. Nobody's ever heard of anything like that happening. Then when I had to get my stuff approved, it was supposed to take years. I got it approved in less than 2 weeks. Being in grad school, being dyslexic is a hugely unfair advantage. And the problem that we had, the hardest thing was writing up the darn work. But now with artificial intelligence, it's pretty much an equalizer. I am doing now more work in a day than I used to do in a year. And that is not an exaggeration.
Okay, so you've got through the childhood where you're obviously talking, to adults all the time who must have seen this in themselves and they now realise this is it. So can dyslexia affect self-esteem long into adulthood? And do you work with adults still who carry those scars?
Oh yeah, I work with that all the time. What I'm finding with adults is you have to remember with my material, the older you are, the quicker you pick it up. The most advanced person I worked with had a master's in business administration from Columbia University, Ivy League. And here, I'll give you an example. I would go to my original program because there's nothing quicker than that. And I asked him, here's a prompt. Okay. Tell me what they're asking. I could go into any American high school for AP English. You'd call them A levels, and say, any of those kids, here's the prompt. What are they asking? And any of the kids will tell me in a couple of seconds max after they get done reading it. Took him almost a minute. Well, after he practiced it about 75 times, he started getting really fast at it. One thing you'll notice with my process, it's massive repetition. Okay. And when he was done, it helped him out tremendously with what he was doing with work. Because not only, instead of the ideas that he was thinking about, instead of them just being so scatterbrained, they would just pop right out. And he knew, like an essay just in his head instantly. Because the thing about us dyslexics is, compared to our gen ed peers, they will always read faster, they will always write faster. But we can think of in orders of magnitude faster than they can. And the more advanced you get, the more unfair the advantage becomes.
So what would you say to them, to adults listening who struggle silently themselves? What would you say to them today?
I would say we can still fix this, and you can learn it very, unlike what everybody else tells you now that you're older. This is going to take so long. It's not. It really isn't. If you want to just learn how we do it, if you go to just skool.com on school, all right, you need somebody that can help walk you through this. We have made it so simple that advanced placement AP English students can teach it. Typically, what I found out is when I get around, even as young as 14 or 15, I was just told this by a neuroscientist in Boston, that girls are about 3 to 4 more years more mature than boys are at that age. I have even had adults hire these brilliant kids to teach them this material, and they would just learn it from our process and then go and work with the adult and show them exactly what to do. I start everybody off at the basic sentences, and then we go forward because I have to fill in all the gaps. I don't know where the holes are, so we have you do everything. But what would take a 9-year-old 5 months, adults generally, I've had adults get done with that within an hour or two, and then we move on to the next one. And it's just, it can be fixed, and it's because you're older and you have the experience, you can do it much more rapidly this way. If you wanted to go back to the traditional Wharton approach, yeah, see you in a half a decade, because that's how long it takes.
Yeah, I get you. So, have you got a particular, you've kind of touched on the younger person, but have you got a particular story of a student you completely transformed, an adult, perhaps student, through your approach?
Sure. Well, he was in college, so technically an adult, but this is one of my more recent cases. He flunked out of school, and his father was not happy with the results. And he said, "How do I fix this?" I said, "Well, Landmark College does a superb job." So he sent his son up to Landmark College, and they're the top dyslexic college in the world. Kid came back. He said, "I'm not going there. It has a social life worse than the local community college." So his father asked, "Well, how can I help him?" I said, "Sure. I'll take him through my original program." And I told the dad, "You pick the school, you pick the courses." And so he did that. His son fired me halfway through the course. He says, "I don't need you anymore." So then he went through the school and then the classes his dad picked, and he got 2 A's. And then we made a compromise. His son didn't go back to a party school. He went to something that was in between, carried a mid-threes GPA, and because he said he wasn't going to be married to the library, but it worked out. And that client, I worked with him for about 2.5 months. And he was, as I said, went to college and went from F to an A.
No. So what was the moment that stayed with you the most out of that?
So what was that?
What was the moments that stay with you the most when you've got
The
examples like that?
fact that I'd never had somebody fire me halfway through and said he didn't need me anymore. It's like, okay. It was, but I'm just saying that's how powerful this is if you actually start working with the dyslexic brain the way it wants to learn. Here, just so you know, let's go back to the science again, just so you know the conflict. The schools are designed for this. this back part. So I want you to think about any successful, really successful academic that, when you were growing up, okay, they would have to do two things. Number one, they would have to properly schedule their study time. And number two, they'd have to work really hard. And if they did those two, I'm talking about your A-level kids, they would then be successful to outrageously successful. Just doing those two things. Does that make sense? Okay. Now let's go look at brains again. We are completely opposite. And then I tell them, just so you know, like Reed, once they caught up, you can send them back in and they'll generally be okay. But to our preferred learning style, they would have to change everything in how they teach. And they don't want to change. They're saying we're going to accommodate you. Let me show you how worthless those accommodations are. I want you to think about, what sport do you suck at the most? For me, it's basketball. What sport do you absolutely suck at?
Tennis.
Okay. So let's imagine that we're going to take the next 6 months off. You're going to practice with the best tennis coach in the world for 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. At the end of that, we're going to go and match you up against a guy who played Division I tennis in university. We're going to give you the best tennis equipment money can buy. He's going to get used Walmart equipment that should be in the dumpster. Is it going to make any difference?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay. So
it might
even
be
with
a little
all
bit.
the,
I could probably play him a bit, but I think he's probably had the passion, hasn't he? But at the beginning, where I haven't, I've had to learn the hard way. Perhaps, I don't know.
Well, but the point is, even if you had the best tennis coach for 6 months, full time, and you had the best tennis equipment in the world, and he's using with stuff that should be in the trash after being purchased at Walmart, he's still going to knock the socks off you because it doesn't matter. Your body was not designed for tennis. Okay? These accommodations aren't going to, because there's nothing, you can't accommodate nothing going on back there. Okay? Well, we have to shift it forward and use the front part. So asking the school to make that shift, they don't want to do it. I mean, and then parents will ask me, well, does this work for other type of kids? One of the most advanced students we're working with now, his name is Grayson. He's not dyslexic in the least. He's just your typical 99th percentile math kid and science kid. Grayson wants to get his PhD, work at NASA to terraform Mars. So he has to publish in a peer-reviewed journal. He's now working on those advanced body paragraphs the way that I showed you earlier. His parents are teaching him. And we're moving him towards to eventually submit an article for publication. I already met from another podcast. He's a gentleman who's on the board of directors of one of our top 10 technical universities. That is usually mentioned in the same word as Cambridge in the UK. Once we're ready, once we get it past a desk review and get rejected by an actual reviewer, which it will be, we're going to hook Grayson up with a professor from that university. And Grayson's going to go in and say, he'd like to work with a professor to publish his article. That here's a list of things that got rejected from peer review, and can he work with a professor? And the guy's jaw will literally drop because Grayson's on the young side. How old do you think he is?
Oh God, maybe mid-teenager.
Grayson's 10.
10. Okay.
Okay. So I want you to imagine if this were to be done at, let's say, Cambridge. You have the most phenomenal A-level student in all of the UK. And then we have Grayson, who's already been rejected by a academic journal with the things that need to get fixed. He passed the desk rejection. He passed the desk review, got actually rejected by a senior professor, saying, here's the problems. Who do you think Cambridge would be more interested in?
Well, I'd say they'd be interested in him because he's got the potential, hasn't he?
Well, he's already proven that. At that point, they don't care about A levels, because then you're expected to go on to Cambridge, do your 4-year undergrad, and then eventually see if you can show what you're doing here in a PhD program, which means you're at least, 21 through probably early to mid 20s to actually been. So we're using that same process we use for dyslexics. Grayson's just flying through it like crazy. We
Yeah.
find that this works well for everybody.
So we've talked about some of the issues within the education system, but what gives you hope about the future of dyslexia education?
I have very little. I am literally at the point now where we're telling parents they need to fix this themselves. I have, we have gone through such insane amount of trying to get things into the educational system. And then I remember I finally took the advice of Kevin O'Leary. Did you ever watch Shark Tank?
I haven't, no.
Okay, half the sharks are dyslexic. Okay, Kevin O'Leary is one of them. He said when he sold a educational company for hundreds of millions of dollars decades ago. What he said was he would spend 90% of his time with school districts for 10% of the sales. And he found he was mostly successful going directly to the parents. I have, quite frankly, given up on trying to go directly to the schools. We nibble at it. We do a few things here or there, but I'm generally going right to the parents and saying, you need to fix this, which is insane because I have parents who are accountants, who are political science professionals, who are electricians. And they're telling me, especially one parent, they're like, I never went to college. I'm an electrician. And you want me to teach my dyslexic high school kid to write. And I said, exactly. And you'll do a far better job in the school. And they just can't. And they're like, why is this not in there? And I said, because remember, it's designed for the back part of the brain, not the front part. I can't get them to focus on your kid's speciality during that intervention period. They won't do it. And then therefore your kid won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, schools are a bit like that. Well, look, just going to break up a little bit, but I don't want to have a quick fire round if you don't mind. Just one
Sure.
word answers, or a sentence, however you feel, just to close things up. So, number one, biggest myth about dyslexia.
Biggest myth is people think that dyslexics are bad readers. Once properly trained, we are superior readers compared to most gen ed students.
Excellent. One thing every parent should know.
Find out what their kid's speciality is and focus on that during the intervention period.
Best habit for struggling readers.
Listen to an audiobook with a real book. Try to answer, what does the hero want to do? Listen while you're following along and trying to answer that question. It'll reduce the chaos in your head by about 70%.
What gives you hope?
Seeing literally the hundreds of kids we worked with succeed and to go on and do spectacular in life.
And a book or resource parents should explore. Well, obviously you've got your one coming out.
Just for the science, the intervention part is not very good. Okay, but just so you understand what the science is.
So just for a closing question then, for a parent listening right now who feels overwhelmed, scared or worried about their child's future, what would you want them to hear today?
Well, just go to the skool.com website, type in Dyslexia Classes, you'll find us. We have a parent one. The parent we have teaching our course, her name is Angela. She's a certified elementary school teacher in the state of Texas with a 2-year master's degree and 10 years of experience. She is now a homeschooling mom, and she has taught her son, August, to go through this process. She's there an hour a week to answer questions as well as our online class. And there's a community there. You do that, we can walk you through anywhere from basic sentences all the way through the most advanced levels.
Oh, great. We'll put the link in all the socials as well. I'll get all that off you later. So, but if people want to learn about Russell and his work and Dyslexia Professor resources he offers families, just mention your website again, your details again, Russell.
My personal website is dyslexiaclasses.com. And just it's with an S, Dyslexia Classes. If you want to know more, just click on, there's a button there that says download free guide. Answer 3 questions and set up a time to speak with me. It's a half an hour, doesn't cost anything, and I can walk you and your kid through the whole process.
Excellent. So look, if you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe, follow and share Not Finished Yet, and follow Russell. And thank you very much, Russell, for coming on. And if anyone's enjoyed the conversation, please share it. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Thanks so much for listening to Not Finished Yet. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Please see the links to all our socials. Until next time, remember, you're not finished yet.